You've seen some blue state Republican lawmakers say this sets a bad precedent and really push back against this.
So as we're guessing at, it's been quite the week at the White House, again. To help us run through some of the big stories from the US, let's welcome Julia Manchester, national politics reporter for The Hill. Hello, Julia.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's good to have you with us. Shall we start, first of all, with Trump and Putin and what we know about the proposed meeting of the two presidents with an eye on Ukraine? Can you just clear up for us how this story has moved through the day in Washington?
Yeah, so essentially the story broke yesterday by the New York Times. President Trump had been posting on Truth Social about a meeting that had taken place between Steve Witkoff, his envoy to the Russia-Ukraine war, and talking about how President Trump himself had met with European leaders. Witkoff had met with Putin, and then you had the New York Times reporting that President Trump was set to meet with Vladimir Putin, or was going to meet with Vladimir Putin at some point, whether it was next week or some point in the near future. Also, it was floated that he'd meet with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, and there was also the idea floated that it could be the three of them in the same room, three separate meetings, you would think. And then today the Kremlin said that President Trump could be slated to meet with Putin as soon as next week. So it's been a fast-moving story, and obviously a big one, because we know that the Trump administration has been very eager to end the Russia-Ukraine war.
Yeah, they've been eager to end it, but perhaps in the interests of the US rather than the interest of Ukraine, because Zelensky's involvement in any potential summit or meeting does seem slightly unclear.
It does seem unclear. I guess you could argue that, maybe the U.S. is obviously, it seems that over the past few weeks, President Trump has become very publicly irritated with Vladimir Putin and Russia, something we really haven't seen before. So you think that, that would play in Zelensky's favor, play in the Ukrainians' favor, but we don't know exactly what role they're going to play, if they're sort of taking a back seat to the U.S. here, or if there's going to be three players at this table, those three players being Russia, U.S. and Ukraine.
Yeah. I just wonder as well then, Julia, when we will get clarity, because Trump has been fairly quiet on this through the day. Are we expecting comments from him tonight, perhaps?
I mean, we could, but, quite to be fair, it's a very busy news day here in the U.S., and there's a number of other things going on. I mean, we, of course, have that tariffs deadline that has gone into place. You have the president really starting to get involved in this redistricting battle in Texas, which is arguably one of the, top stories stateside. So we could hear him, start to talk about this more. But I think President Trump is walking a fine line with this. I mean, he understands that Putin has sort of left him out to dry in the past, so he might not want to get hopes up too much and not show his cards too much in these negotiations. So we'll see. But from what we've seen so far today, President Trump is very focused on trade, given the tariffs deadline.
On that redistributing story, I mean, what is the latest that we have? This is Democratic congressmen fleeing Texas so they didn't have to vote through gerrymandering, which would have benefited Republicans. What's going on now?
So it's really interesting how this is playing out in Texas, because you're having sort of this battle between the federal government, in a way, the Trump administration, and, obviously the Abbott administration to the state level in Texas, and these Texas Senate Democrats. And it's turned into this battle because you had Texas Senator John Cornyn, who is a Republican from Texas, but is a federally elected official, writing to FBI Director Kash Patel, who's a part of the Trump administration, asking the FBI to help track down some of these Texas lawmakers and to potentially arrest them. Some important context is that John Cornyn is a very long-time senator, a very powerful Republican senator. He's facing an incredibly tough primary challenge from Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who is also threatening to begin the process of removing some of these Democratic lawmakers from office. So one part of this is these two Texas officials trying to one-up each other in this Senate primary battle, but we're seeing it play turn into this battle between, the federal government and, Texas Democrats ultimately. And this is extending far beyond Texas. Indiana and Ohio are the next two red states that are expected to redistrict, as well as Florida. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has said that he would like this to be done in Florida as well. But we're hearing President Trump also say that he wants the census to be redone. The census is done every 10 years in the United States to account for population change. And normally redistricting takes place after the census takes place. So this mid-decade redistricting is very unusual, whether it's in a Republican state or a Democratic state. So President Trump trying to legitimize this, calling for the census to be redone. But Democrats trying to fight fire with fire here as well. You have Gavin Newsom in California, Kathy Hochul in New York, J.B. Pritzker in Illinois, all of these blue states that are also calling for redistricting, saying that if Republicans want to play this game, Democrats have to push back in the same way.
Yeah, and that's the point, isn't it? That redistricting did take place following the census. So this is the Republicans, for their own reasons, trying to bring this forward to shift the dial ahead of the midterms.
Absolutely. This would, appear to help Republicans in Texas. So the logic is that Republicans get, let's say, 5 additional seats in Texas and Florida. Let's say they get 3 to 4 additional seats. That gives them cushion in case they lose more competitive seats in other states. So we know that there's a very slim majority Republicans have in the House. So they're using redistricting to give them sort of a fallback plan. The problem with this, though, and this is where you see a lot of Republicans, or some Republicans, I should say, pushing back, is that if you're a Republican from a blue state, so like a Republican congressman from California, a Republican congressman from New York, you've would likely have run in very tough elections, and you're looking at your home state governor who is now looking at retaliating against these Republicans in Texas by redrawing Republican districts in the blue states. So you've seen some blue state Republican lawmakers say this sets a bad precedent and really push back against this. But I think we're way too far into this fight to see, any backtracking at this point.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, how likely do you think is for this census to actually take place? And what would be the sort of immediate consequences for that?
So it's possible that it could take place and be redone. I know that Governor Ron DeSantis from Florida has said that he's spoken to the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick about the possibility of redoing this. So it could take place. It's going to take up a lot of time and resources, but theoretically, if the Trump administration has enough support in this, they could go ahead and do this before the 2026 midterms. Now, we'll see if that ultimately benefits the Trump administration in the midterms. There's been a lot of population change post-2020 and post-2021 coming out of the pandemic. A lot more people have moved to the southeastern part of the United States. So Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, Texas, they've seen population booms. And you would think that, for Florida or Texas, that could work very well in their favor if the census is redone. However, you've seen a lot of people from the Northeast and other parts of the country move to other states like North Carolina, many people who might not be conservative or right-leaning. So we don't know if this will necessarily benefit the Trump administration in the long term.
Julia, that's a story I am obsessed with, I have to say. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks. Now, Julia Manchester, who is national politics reporter for The Hill.